I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, clinical psychologist and podcaster, and I'm here with Kevin Benbow, my partner in podcasting. And excuse me, I thought a good subject for today's REBT podcast would be a subject I came up with based on the ideas of Jean Piaget, a Swiss psychologist of the last century. But before we get into that, let's discuss the basis of all our podcasts, and that's Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, REBT. Rational Behavior Therapy is the first cognitive behavior therapy. It was developed by Albert Ellis, and it says a critical thing that most people don't recognize, or if they do recognize it, they don't express it, and that is our emotions, whatever they are, good, bad, adaptive, maladaptive, come from our thinking. That's the anchor here. If you don't like your emotions, look to your thinking, change your thinking, not your childhood or other situations, but what you're telling yourself, the ideas in your head. And that was popularized by Albert Ellis at ELLIS, and he wrote over 80 books on the subject. Kevin, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just my name. I'm Kevin Benbow, located in Yuma, Arizona. I'm licensed in Arizona and New Mexico, and if you live in Arizona, I probably take your insurance. And I am taking new clients now, by the way.
And if you don't live in Arizona and aren't covered by insurance, I still highly recommend Kevin as one of the best rational emotive behavior therapists around. Okay, now today we're going to be discussing some of the work of Jean Piaget, and in addition to it, Jean Piaget was a psychologist known for his work on cognitive child development and the thought processes children go through as they get older, from thinking very concretely to thinking very abstractly. And he had a name for each of those stages. The first stage was the sensory motor stage, and the final stage was the formal operational stage, where children begin to think more logically, more deductively, and understand abstract ideas better. Now, the addition to that, after the stage of formal operationals, I added is called conservation of self. All his stages involve conservation of something, getting to higher and higher levels, from conservation of mass to up to conservation of value and up to the conservation of formal thought. And so the last stage that I wrote a Psychology Today blog on is called conservation of self. And that's where you realize not only does the volume of something not change, no matter what shape the glass is, or the mass of something does not change, no matter what shape you fashion the clay into, whether it's a ball or a thin spaghetti, the mass still stays the same. With conservation of self, you still say the same, no matter how bad your actions or good your actions. You're never a good or bad person, but you're always just an imperfect human who acts imperfectly. So yourself, your identity, your personhood remains the same. It's conserved. So, Kevin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, it reminds me of something from a book I read a while back called Opening the Hand of Thought. The idea, this is a Buddhist idea, basically, and you can tell me what you think here, but we can imagine the sky. Here in Arizona, we have very few clouds. More than 330 days a year, we have bright blue sky up above us. If we can think of the bright blue sky as the self, we can also then think of the different weather that appears in the sky as perhaps different behaviors, different emotions, different thoughts, things of that nature. Those things change, but the sky beyond it remains the same, even though we might be confronted with a thunderstorm or other bad weather like snow, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. So that's another good illustration of something that's conserved, stays the same, as you're saying, no matter what the form is, or the image is, or how it looks. There's still a sky there, a bright blue sky,
Mhm.
which the change in form is underneath.
Mhm.
So what we're saying here is it's unreasonable and it doesn't make any sense to condemn yourself, put yourself down, depress yourself, make yourself guilty, no matter how poorly you act. Now, that doesn't mean it's okay no matter what you do. It's not okay if you punch someone in the nose. That's not okay. But your act is bad, but that doesn't turn you into a bad person. Just like the sky, you stay the same imperfect human who acts imperfectly. So learn to accept yourself unconditionally, uh, all through thick and thin, even with gaining weight or losing weight. You're not a bad person if you gain weight, if that goes against your goals. You acted poorly, and you're not a good person if you go on your diet, lose weight, you acted well, but you're still the same human underneath.
That's the slippery slope, isn't it? The idea of not rating ourselves also means not rating ourselves or our essence as positive either, because that can lead to conditional self-esteem. If I do something very well and I say, well, gee, I'm a wonderful human being because of what I did, then that's something I have to keep up with if I want to keep up with my self-esteem. I put myself on a treadmill, and that's impossible for me to continually guarantee I'm going to behave in a. I'm going to. It's impossible for me to guarantee that. So the idea is not to rate the self at all, just the behavior, good behavior, not necessarily a good person, not a bad person either.
Right. And as you said, Kevin, one way to look at it is a slippery slope. But another way to look at it is a not so much a slippery slope, but a universal difference between rating your total self and rating your actions. Those are in two different universes. So it might take a leap of faith to jump from rating your actions to rating your total self.
Mm.
Now, it's easy for us to say, don't rate yourself and don't put yourself up or down. But it's not easy to do for most people, because not only are we raised in our environment, our culture, to put ourselves down because people think that way, but we have genetic proclivity to rate our total selves. That's the way people are. I don't know if dogs rate themselves, but they might in some elementary or primitive way. But that's being human. So you're just an imperfect human acting humanly when you rate your total self. That's why it's difficult to change, but not impossible. So work, 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 and practice, practice, practice at the thinking differently.
And what you said, jumping back to a moment, Piaget's concrete versus abstract, I find in myself and in my clients, it's much more easy to think in a concrete way. That's where our mind goes. In fact, it's almost like kids. They immediately go to, if I think of a 5 or a 6-year-old, they immediately go to all or nothing thinking. You're a bad person because you cheated at that game, or you're a wonderful person because you gave me a lollipop. It's like I see it as an infantile way of thinking. And, we develop the ability to think abstractly over time, but it's more difficult. It's more challenging, takes more time for us to get those abstract thoughts in there, which is probably why most of us tend to revert to that concrete thinking when we experience a strong adversity of some sort.
Okay, very good. I'll give you the last word on that,
Mm.
Kevin, a wise last word. So if you have any questions about anything we discussed, please comment below. Give us a like, a thumbs up if you found this useful. Suggest subjects for future podcasts. We're always interested in ideas from our viewers. If you'd like to volunteer to be a guest, it's been a while since we've had a guest, please let us know in the comments. And if you would like to get some help, if you'd like us to cure you of your depression, anxiety, anger at no charge, you can be a guest yourself. Donate to Patreon, please, if you would like to support our podcasts, and subscribe to the 3 Minute Therapy podcast to stay on the rational side of life.